In the 21st century, political rhetoric has led millions of people to think about questions of personal integrity in an overly abstract way. All right? Question of whether or not you have freedom of speech. You can't think about that in your own life. You can't think about it in terms of the political commitments and decisions you make individually, in the same way that you think of it on an abstract level as it pertains to the writing of a constitution that governs millions of people. We do make the decision as individuals to give up or limit our freedom of speech. We do make the decision to give up or limit our sense of personal integrity. We do make the decision as individuals to subordinate our own sense of personal integrity to some other mandate, mission, purpose, or cause. Most commonly, people will sign a contract with an employer. There are high school history teachers who go into work every day, and these may be people who passionately care about history, who research and read about history in their own time, and that's what they did in university as university students, and they have to go into work and teach a history course to high school students where they know the textbook is misleading, dishonest, false, and manipulative. But they have made that commitment where they have decided their own sense of personal integrity matters less than the integrity of the institution. Maybe it matters less than the integrity of a government guideline that defines the syllabus, defines the curriculum, wherever it is that textbook comes from. They answer to an authority that requires them, it may or may not be written explicitly in their contract, it requires them not to criticize the textbook. It requires them to teach history to those students the way the textbook has decided history is, the way some council or some government minister has decided history should be taught to students. And they may know that it's bad and it's wrong. They may know that it's propaganda, right? They've made that decision, right? I haven't. When I come here on YouTube, I really have my own sense of personal integrity, honesty, dignity, and what the exercise of freedom of speech means to me. And as it happens, I haven't sold out to anyone. Okay? That doesn't mean it's inconceivable to me. That doesn't mean I would never sign a contract with an employer to do that. As you know, it's probably the most examined case study or example. There are journalists who decide that their own sense of personal integrity matters less than serving the mission or mandate of this newspaper, of this TV station, that there's some editorial director who gets to decide what the story is, and then their role as a journalist is to serve that mission or mandate or purpose, and not to exercise their own freedom of speech, not to criticize it or point out how wrong it is, so on and so forth. And that subordination of your personal integrity, it may not be limited to the hours when you're in the office working for the school as a high school teacher, or when you're in the office as a journalist working for the TV station. I think it's now commonplace for high school teachers to be fired because of what they say on social media. If you're a high school teacher who in the classroom says that the history textbook is good and true and accurate, and then you come on YouTube and you make your own YouTube videos explaining everything that's wrong with the textbook, you may well be out of a job. You may well be fired. The school may say to you, we expect you to uphold the party line. We expect you to preach this 24/7. We expect you to never break out of character. We expect you to play the role of the good teacher who supports this curriculum, who supports this institution and our mandate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Certainly, if you're a news presenter, you will be fired if you present one version of reality when you're at work delivering the news, and then you go home and have a YouTube channel where you talk about everything that's wrong with the news that week. Okay? I've seen this from many different angles because I've lived a very peculiar life. I have seen the way in which the snowball of uncritical mutual praise in a context where everyone has sold out and nobody has any personal integrity, nobody has any sense that they're going to tell the truth, even if it's inconvenient for them, it's inconvenient for the institution, it's inconvenient for the authorities, it's inconvenient for everyone. I've seen the way this becomes a dangerous snowball in humanitarian work. Okay? You can literally have projects that were intended to alleviate starvation, projects that were intended to feed the poor, that end up destroying the towns and villages of the poor, that end up driving them out of their homes, that end up in them starving or being homeless. I know real examples of this, more in Laos than Cambodia, but yeah, I know about projects that are disastrous in Cambodia. And how did this happen? Fundamentally, people are going to meetings. They're university-educated people sitting down and participating in meetings, and none of them are willing to stand up and say, this is a failure, this is a disaster, all right? I am not exaggerating, okay? There were humanitarian interventions that resulted in the complete depopulation and abandonment of the villages of poor people that the charitable agency was allegedly trying to help, feed, clothe, alleviate their poverty. All right, so poverty alleviation can go disastrously wrong. I could make a whole video talking about that. I'm not going to address that. I have seen the way the snowball of mutually uncritical praise rolls down the hill in the context of academia, in a discipline like anthropology. I have also seen it within the very peculiar demimonde of Buddhism, both the academic study of Buddhism and Buddhism as a religion. And many of these people, unlike the high school teacher, unlike the journalist, they maybe never signed a contract. They maybe never consciously and intentionally signed up and decided, okay, my integrity matters less than this mission, mandate, or purpose. Many of them just made a vague, free-form commitment to be flattering towards everyone all the time with the hope that it would pay off in future. Right? Now, many people ask me, why don't I do the same? In each of these contexts, people ask me why I didn't do the same. Why can't you just play the game the way everyone else in the humanitarian work sector is playing the game? I was asked. I published articles that deeply embarrassed corrupt and immoral organizations for what they were doing in the humanitarian sector. It was a big scandal. Got into the European press, not just the Southeast Asian press and so on. There were major scandals where I, as a journalist, really broke the story. I did research that had a big impact on very wealthy and powerful people in Southeast Asia, and I did that for the sake of the poor and downtrodden who couldn't do what I did as a researcher and journalist, right? I did that with a real sense of moral purpose, and I'm sure it made me unemployable in that sector, or at least you could say unemployable by other people who have no sense of personal integrity. But of course, there were people in that sector who saw what I was doing and admired it and respected it and said, wow, this is a guy who's doing real research, who's doing real things. This is someone there were people who said I was someone they admired. Anyway, I was appreciated by the right people and despised by the right people. That's what happens when you have personal integrity. Within the world of Buddhist studies and scholarship, I know there were examples of people who broke down weeping because of the criticism I offered their published work. And it's partly because they were not used to that. That whole field was just, completely uncritical mutual praise. And here comes the one guy in the field who's willing to say, no, the author of this book, there was a major book on Buddhism in Cambodia. The author of the book can't read Cambodian. He has no ability in the Cambodian language. He can't read Pali, which is the ancient language relevant to the situation the way Latin and ancient Greek are relevant to Europe. He can't read Cambodian. He can't read Pali. This guy apparently had some knowledge of French, and he wrote this book as a complete outsider, an amateur with no expertise and no local experience. I mean, I had more expertise than him, and I'm not the world's greatest expert in Cambodia. And the book was full of outrageous, laughable errors. The book was garbage. And there are all these people who are part of the, snowball rolling downhill of mutual praise. And I'm the one guy who's willing to stand up and indeed write a book review, write articles and really talk about, no, this book is bad and evil and wrong. And the author of that book never spoke to me again. And I think it's fair to say in the tiny world, because it's a tiny world of English language scholarship on Cambodia, nobody would talk to me. There's another whole story. The French language world of scholarship on Cambodia, they also wouldn't talk to me because I was too harsh a critic of the French Empire. Those people were still pro-empire. And I was doing research that really showed how bad and evil the French Empire was. So that was a whole other different mind-blowing context. So Here on YouTube right now, there are people who say to me, in effect, who ask me, why don't I sell out? Why don't I subordinate my sense of personal integrity to the purpose of being flattering towards others with the expectation that this will be good for my career and future? That's what almost everyone else does. Not everybody, but that's what almost everyone else does, okay? In any of these contexts, whether it's vegan activism, making YouTube videos, Buddhist academia, or even something like signing up to join the military or working as a journalist, all these contexts, real life and otherwise, you have to challenge yourself with this counterfactual question. If I did write a flattering and dishonest book review, and we can use examples from here on YouTube. I made a book review of a book about vegan politics by Casey Taft. It's a very harsh, negative book review. But I did the research, I read the book, I quote the book, I have, quoted text on screen. I have a carefully footnoted analytical approach explaining to you what's wrong with that book, okay? If your point is that I would be better off today if instead I presented uncritical, positive praise for the book. The author of that book, Casey Taft, he's a vegan activist, he's some kind of career academic, I think he has a PhD, and he also owns a publishing company, and it publishes children's books. I have an interest in writing and publishing children's books, talked about it for many years. So you could say cynically that it would be in my interest to sell out. It would be in my interest to praise and flatter this guy the way everybody else does, and just say, oh, your book was wonderful, your book was so great, in the hope that some positive collaboration and cooperation come out of it. So again, keep in mind, the high school history teacher signs a contract and gets paid. He sells out explicitly, consciously, intentionally. Other people sleepwalk into situations where they're selling out their integrity with no contract, with no payment. It's just in the hope that in future it's somehow going to pay off for them, right? Instead of a journalist who's now being employed by a major news network, think about a young, aspiring journalist who's just working for free, doing local community radio, maybe local public broadcasting on TV and uploading articles to the internet, but they already have the mentality of selling out and praising everyone in the hope that in future it's going to lead to that kind of employment. Certainly, what happens here on YouTube, what happens in Buddhist academia, most of these people never consciously entered into a contract. They sold out without anyone ever paying the price, without ever any commitment being made to them. They decided that their personal integrity matters less than something that's merely hypothetical and possible in the future that may never pay off. This is one interesting element, okay? There's an important counterfactual possibility here, right? What if I offer sincere criticism? What if I do a book review? What if I write a book review or make a book review video here on YouTube? It's the same either way. What if I write that book review and then the author I'm criticizing, he responds positively. He respects me for the work I did. He recognizes that this is meaningful, incisive, analytical criticism. He recognizes this is, and then we're friends on that basis. You have to recognize the possibility of that, no matter how rare. And then in that context, as soon as you have that possibility in mind, you have to ask yourself, would I want to be friends with this person? Would I want to be colleagues with this person on the basis of a lie? On the basis of flattery, deception, and manipulation? Because if I write a book review where I'm saying this is a great and wonderful book when I know it's not, where I'm covering up the errors, the inadequacies, if I'm doing that, and then this person says, wow, that was a great book review, thank you so much for promoting me in my career or whatever the situation is, right? Even if a friendship results from that, even if cooperation or collaboration results with that, that's an outcome I don't want, because then I am in the position of being the liar and the manipulator, right? I'm not just destroying my own integrity. I'm actually destroying the other person's integrity. I'm destroying the integrity of the system as a whole. I'm destroying the integrity of the larger project that we're a part of as a whole, whether you think of that project as being journalism, the investigation and reporting on political affairs, whether that project is humanitarian work in a third world country, whether that project is vegan activism, or whether that project is just making YouTube videos for us to sit down, reflect on the meaning of our lives, try to gather together our thoughts and intentions, and resolve on how to be better people tomorrow.